I pray that your hand will reach down wherever she is and just bring her back to her family, bring her back to us.
It's a Native American flute, and I set out at night as the sun sets and I play a song for Summer. So that's what I'm doing every night until we get her back home.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this episode, we're going to look at David Dodson, the family friend. I sort of want to put that in inverted commas, but the family friend of the Wells family and someone who was also at the scene on June 15th, the night of June 15th, after Summer Wells went missing. Now, someone on Patreon actually described him as the Pied Piper of this case. He is someone who plays a sort of Native American flute, and he does seem to be a sort of eccentric character. But the part that I'm interested in is this thing that I suggested in the previous episode, this idea of inviting all sorts of, not strangers, but individuals to the scene, which then kind of confuses the situation. And as someone actually pointed out, I think quite astutely, if you could have had Robin on the scene from the beginning, let's say she'd answered her phone, the police would be presented with this attractive blonde lady, and you would sort of get the sense of, this is someone who knows Summer, and there are some good people, nice people involved in this situation. And I don't know whether that would really be accurate. You know, why didn't Candace call Alison Harris, for example, or Macbeth? And there are some disturbing contradictions where we are led to believe from certain people that Candace was with the boys at the swimming hole. I know that was one of the early stories, and then it wasn't the boys, it was a boy, and it certainly wasn't one of her sons, right? So it sort of opens kind of a can of worms, kind of what is going on here? What is the true story of what happened on June the 15th? Before we go to that in more detail, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. Now, make sure you listen in to the end. I'm going to be talking a little bit about tonight's live stream. Well, it's night for me at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Just be taking you through the subject matter and letting you know a little bit about what to expect from that. Now, in the previous episode, we briefly touched on this whole idea of, inviting a lot of people to the crime scene, as occurred in the John Benet Ramsey case, where they invited a bunch of their friends and also their pastor. You kind of had a similar situation in the McCann case as well, except that it was all their holiday mates sort of rampaging through that crime scene. And in a situation like this, it's very easy for the authorities, for people who don't know the family, to conflate an innocent scenario, so a scenario where a child might have gotten lost or wandered off or something like that. It's easy to conflate that with foul play. I should actually say it the other way around. It's easy to confuse something that is actually foul play with something that appears innocent, especially when you've got the closest people, the family members, basically giving you that version of events and assuring you that something like that is likely. And what one wonders is, at Ben Hill Road, when the police were there, were the family members sort of saying to the authorities, what, she was 100% abducted? Or were they saying, well, we think she got lost? Because if they were saying at that time immediately that they believed it was an abduction, then you would have a certain kind of response from the authorities. I don't know when the helicopters were summoned, but that is certainly something that is quite a, you don't often have helicopters coming out when little children go missing, right? So it would be interesting to know from the people who were there, like David Dodson and like Robin Lane, what was being said? What were the police asking them? What was the general feeling? Was it that some had wandered off? Was it a case that the police thought something and that the parents were saying something else? But to me, the thing that really stands out here is the summoning of these other people to the scene. And someone made the point that, when they couldn't get hold of Robin, then the next person kind of in line who they wanted there, meaning the Wells family, the Wells couple, the next person they wanted there was David Dodson. And so what do we find out from him? So we're fortunate that I think on the 10th of July, Dodson gave an interview, quite a long one, I think it was over an hour, with the Unmasked channel. And we're going to get a little bit of insight into how he saw the events through that. And I'll put a link to that interview in the description so you can check it out. So I would dearly love to play the actual audio rather than sort of narrate what he's saying, but I don't want to get into trouble for doing that. In any event, a couple of things, early observations from David Dodson. Now you must bear in mind, one's got to treat this, it's not doctrine. What he's saying is simply what he thinks and knows, right? And it's not what the authorities necessarily think or know. It's basically what this witness thinks or knows, right? So one of the things that Dodson mentions is that the basement door was locked, right? And that was something that apparently the boys told him. The boys told Dodson that the basement door was locked. And so that the only way in or out was through the front door. That contradicts what I think one of the parents said. So you've actually had one of the parents saying that the door wasn't locked and the other one saying that it was locked. And now the children say the same thing. I think it was Candace who said that the door was locked. So Candace is basically saying she kind of had custody over Summer, and while she was supervising, no one came in or out, she was a good mom kind of thing. And the problem with this story, the problem with the basement door being locked, is that there's now not really an opportunity either for Summer to wander off or for an abducted to sort of find a way inside the home. And now I suppose the story then has to be that Summer wandered down to the bottom of the road, or was lured down to the bottom of the road, or was led down to the bottom of the road, and then that is then where the trail stopped. But one wonders whether Summer's trail to the bottom of the road wasn't a trail that she'd left ordinarily, right? Because that was the route that the boys and, well, I don't know if Summer would go that route, but when the boys went to school, they would wait for the bus at the bottom of the road. The question is, would Summer go along with them? In other words, would she have left a trail anyway? Then Dodson also refers to them searching with drones, and that because of the thick undergrowth, you have a bit of a difficulty with that. A good way around that is to use infrared scanning or infrared imaging. Another thing is ground penetrating radar. That is typically used, but it's not. It tends to be more effective in the early days of a search. Then I think he was also asked how many dogs the family have, and he said that as far as he knew, there were only 6 dogs. I think I did mention somewhere that at a certain time you can have a couple of dogs, and then if they breed and they have litters, it can suddenly explode to 2 or 3 times that number. So one wonders whether that happened. We do know that Summer had a puppy at the time that she disappeared, so one wonders how that factored into it. Was the puppy running around outside? Was she running after the puppy? And did that inflate the number of the dogs? Then Dodson also refers to there being 5,000 square acres of terrain that had been searched at this point, and that basically stopped searching the area after about 2 weeks. So that, I think, since he made this interview, has changed. As far as I know, I don't know this for sure, I heard kind of a rumor. I think someone said that it was posted on Donald's Facebook. So I say this under correction, that the authorities did return to Ben Hill Road and were searching around there, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Family, they need that support. A lot of negativity has been said, and it affects the mother, the father, and the children. And we just want to focus on getting Summer back. And that's the main thing.
So that was actually David Dodson, I think, the day after this interview with Unmasked. And that was him. He appeared at the prayer circle. And you also heard, it's a clip played at the beginning of this episode, you heard him praying at the prayer vigil at the Kingsport SDA church. So he's obviously a member of that church as well. The thing that I found quite surprising, just going back to that video, I'll put a link to that video in the description, is that I didn't see Robin praying. I don't know whether she was simply absent. I don't know if she was present there. I certainly don't see her amongst the congregation. But it is interesting that she wasn't part of the prayer vigil in the church right in the beginning, when she was actually present at the scene, and she later then organized the balloons. So one wonders, what was the reason for her absence?
I met the family about 3 months ago through church, and so I've just known them just a few short months.
So I don't really know what to make of David Dodson saying he met the family through church. I've also heard that he lives in the area, that he's part of the Beach Creek community. So I'm just a little bit not clear on that. I don't know if some of you guys have got better information, because I was kind of under the impression that he was, if not a neighbor, someone who lived in the area. So is that not true? And so if that is true, it's strange that he wouldn't say something like that. But I suppose it is possible that he could be not quite a direct neighbor, but a nearby neighbor who then encountered them at church. And clearly the family felt comfortable enough to have him take the boys playing, we call it putt-putt. I'm not quite sure what you guys call it, but, miniature golf or whatever, taking the boys miniature golfing. So he obviously does know the family fairly well in order to be trusted with something like that.
From speaking with Candace and Don, and the boys, obviously, they just want Summer back. And they just want her safe return back. And they are just, just keep on praying.
Now, you may have heard also David Dodson talking about the quote-unquote negativity. And I think it's quite interesting that anyone who seems to want to talk about, has foul play been involved, what's going on with these contradictory statements by Candace and Don, and what is kind of going on, what happened on June 15th. There's the sense of, well, you're being negative, right? And then yet when you're talking about, well, she's no longer alive and there's an abductor, there's nothing negative about that. So in other words, if you don't toe the line of Candace and Don, then you're being negative. I just find that quite weird, and I don't know whether the church are echoing that sort of position, right, where you must be positive, and being positive is basically supporting the family no matter what they say. But I think the thing that really stands out to me is the summoning of both Dodson and Robin Lane, to the scene on the night of June 15th. If we are talking about a cover-up, then in a way it would make sense to confuse the authorities by having these other people wandering around as well. So you kind of don't know who is actually Summer's father, who is Summer's mother, who are these people, what is actually going on. And obviously it's much easier and clearer to get a sense of, okay, so who do I need to talk to, and who was she last seen with, and what were the final events, when you've only got basically, say, Candace to deal with. But as soon as you bring these other people into the scene, it adds confusion. And the question is, well, wasn't that by design? Wasn't that the point? What do you guys think? And there was some pushback on this particular point, where someone said, obviously when something like this has happened, you're going to want support. right? So you're going to call people or whatever. Well, I don't know whether the first person you would call would be your daughter's Sunday school teacher. You know, maybe you would call your pastor, but I don't know if you would call your daughter's Sunday school teacher. I also don't know whether you would call someone that you barely knew. Like David Dodson doesn't seem to be a long-time family friend. In his own words, as you heard there, he'd known them for about 3 months. And that does raise kind of another question. Who are the Wells friends, like in that area? And one of them that we know about is Alison Harris, and she's not terribly positive about Candace, or kind of what has been going on there. There's been a bit of a fallout. But it does sort of make you wonder, why wouldn't they have had Alison come to the scene? And probably the answer is they probably wouldn't have wanted Alison to provide the authorities with the kind of insight that she could and probably did. I also think this raises the question, are Candace and Don really cooperating with the police? Like the authorities, Leslie Earhart said something like, they are currently cooperating. But are they really? Were they really? What do you guys think? So I'm not going to take it further than that. So there's a little bit more to say about David Dodson. I'm going to leave it to you guys to watch that unmasked interview if you haven't already. If you've got any comments or observations that I haven't raised yet, please leave them in the comments, assuming they're not disabled again. This later today's day 33 since Summer Wells disappeared. And, you know, after 33 days, I think one can ask the question, how are they managing to get away with this? And so in the live, I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about, you know, how is it possible that Summer's been missing for over 33 days, and someone seems to be getting away with something. How's that possible? And one way that we're going to look into that is other cases. We're going to look at intertextuality, and it's really fascinating looking at how this process works from the sort of discrete position of law enforcement. You know, they keep their cards quite close to their chests. We're going to look at it from that position, because I know from the way that it looks like from this side of time, it does feel like, wow, how are they managing to get away with this? And I think the flip side to that question is, are they managing to get away with this? So I look forward to seeing you guys in the live discussion at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. That's about 7:00 UK time. See you guys then. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.